Brent here with Bring Your Own Tools, and on today's episode, if you want to learn how we installed our own beautiful Loft Net, this one actually connected to my deck, we'll keep on watching. Let's get started.
Oh, and as a quick side note, make sure you wait till the very end because we have one extremely entertaining outtake. It involves a drone. This project all started with this miscellaneous space that used to be the original deck. The new deck was built a few years ago, but this space really doesn't have a true purpose, which is why we're going to be installing a Loft Net to really spice things up. Now, with a project like this, it's all about the framework first because the most important thing is that it's safe and secure for anyone to use properly. Now, depending on where you live, your pressure-treated lumber might look differently, but this in the Northwest is the generic pressure-treated lumber that you will see on almost every single project. Now, there are countless options to choose from with the Loft Nets because you can make them custom sizes, and my size is a pretty unique aspect, so you might not have to do all this type of framework for your specific project, but for mine, I have to build out the deck boards themselves just to make sure that the load that is going to be bearing on the Loft Net is not going to affect the structural integrity of the deck that's adjacent to it. As you can see here, I'm doubling up my joist to ensure proper strength and support for the deck ends. It's actually pretty nice because I can use the existing railings and actually just use a longer through bolt to secure both the railing as well as the two joists together. Very simple and very easy to do. Just make sure all your fasteners are galvanized. With this Loft Net system, you don't want to fasten the actual eye bolts to the house directly or to the deck directly. You actually want to create a ledger board across the deck as well as across the side of your house. That will ensure proper support, and I'm actually using these ledger lock screws that are specifically designed for ledger boards. They're perfect, and with an impact driver, they go in very easy and very quickly. As far as hardware spacing goes, go ahead and take a look at what your local state requires based upon the frequency of where you need the hardware to be. The decades of weather abuse on this post really has done a number on it and is basically just falling apart from me touching it.
Okay, as you can see, I have a really odd corner here just because this is where the original deck was. And hopefully you don't have to worry about this and the monotony that is involved with trying to fix this over here. But we have a post that goes all the way up top, which I do somewhat want to keep. However, I'm going to put and replace that with a new beam. Now, this guy originally was supporting this post, or this beam for the deck. However, I want to get rid of that, which is why I braced it with this bad boy. So we have that fully braced nicely, and now I can cut away the rest of it, hopefully.
There is a fairly sizable overhang on my roof that this beam is actually attached to. However, I knew this rotted out post was not supporting the roofline because if it was, then this roofline would have been gone years and years ago, which would not have been a fun one to fix. But luckily for me, this post was not a structural support, and therefore it came out very easy without having to worry about anything overhead. As for what this beam is going to be attached to, on the bottom side, we're going to be using this concrete post. Yeah, it's an old concrete post that was there originally with the house, and therefore I need to pre-drill a few holes for my concrete anchors. I'm using a hammer drill with a specific concrete drill bit, so please make sure you're using that if you want to save a lot of time and energy. I also ensure that I get all the miscellaneous particles out of the hole itself before applying some epoxy. This is specific concrete anchor epoxy, and the reason why I love these tips is because it actually pre-mixes the two epoxies together, and by the time it gets to the very end of the tube, it's fully mixed and it can harden properly. At this point, I center my base plates and install my anchors. There are plenty of base plates to choose from. Just make sure it raises the post off the concrete at least an inch so there's no chance that it will be sitting in moisture when it rains. As for the new post that's going to be taking the place of the old dilapidated one, we're using a 4x10 by 16 foot long post. That's going to be very sizable and very nice to replace such an old post that not only looked bad, but did not provide any type of structural support. As a side note, I always like to use a speed square to ensure that I have perfectly straight cuts, especially on ones that are going to be very visible. However, on this piece, we did not get to use the circular saw the whole time because it was too deep, so therefore I used my reciprocating saw after that. As for pressure treated lumber, when they cure the material, it doesn't always soak all the way through, so therefore if you do make cuts and it is going to be exposed, make sure you add a little bit of extra wood treatment to the cut area in order to ensure that it's not going to be a weak point over time. Oh, and make sure you have a second hand to lift these heavy beams because my dad definitely helped me out on these ones.
My oh my, that is a large beam. But guess what? First time setting it, that is pretty doggone good. Woo!
Once I like the position, I then proceed to fasten it securely into the existing beam.
Now we have to secure that beam. How are we gonna do that? We are gonna be installing these guys, actually. It's gonna be one here and one here, and then there's gonna be a through bolt through there, so we have full support on that beam.
This beam is quite secure without these braces because of the fact that it took a few hammers to get it even into this position. However, I just want to make sure and be thorough and very careful that there is no chance of this beam going anywhere over time. Now, as for the base plate, I do have a few through bolts that I actually positioned properly to secure the base of this post as well. Now, in all honesty, looking back, I do kind of wish I just busted out this old piece of concrete and then poured a new slab in place. However, it's lasted this long, so is it really going to go anywhere? Probably not. But if I do feel like it needs a little bit of extra protection and support, I might actually pour a thicker, larger base around this existing post and therefore just bulking up a little extra protection overall. Now, if you've seen my how to build a deck video, you know how much I love palm nailers. And anytime I get to use a palm nailer is a good day just because it's such a perfect tool for one specific job, but it does that one job very, very well. Getting back to the deck side, I probably could have used a large heavy-duty bracket in order to secure the cross beam from the deck to the other post. However, because I wanted to make sure we had proper support, I actually put another post into this position in order to withstand the weight and the load that's associated with all the weight that's going to be in the net itself. This way, not only will the crossbeam be connected to the deck as well as the new post that we just installed, but it will also be resting on this post next to the deck. As for my favorite part of any project is angle cuts with a circular saw. No, I don't think anyone's ever said that before. I'm just kidding, just because these are generally a pain in the butt, but the one thing that really made life a lot easier with these angle cuts is to actually use a speed square and actually drill it into position. That way you have two hands on the saw, steady as can be, due to the fact that you have a well-supported speed square adjacent to it. Now, in all honesty, I did have to recut this angle because I did it at a 45-degree angle, but I actually figured out that I needed a 35-degree angle to get this shape. Now, I'm sure some of you are asking yourself, why didn't you just make the net square? I could have done that, obviously, and it would have made life a little bit easier, but I wanted something that fit this space, and I felt like a unique shape made things just a little bit more intriguing.
Yeah, we just had to put this large Mondo beam here, but the best part about it, the very first time, perfectly level. That's what I'm talking about.
I throw a few ledger lock fasteners in there as well as a galvanized steel plate. Now specifically, this is just to ensure that this thing is not going to be going anywhere, especially with the fact that we have a supporting post below it. And finally, our final framework piece for this project is this beam that's actually going to be resting on top of the original existing beam, which is just located in our perfect little loft nook. Our cute outdoor loft nook. Now at a certain point I did realize I need some more brackets in order to make sure that this thing feels secure and it's not going to be going anywhere. So I did place this sizable galvanized bracket in position in order to ensure that that new post never separates from the original beam. And now that we have our framework installed, it's now time for the fun part, the Loft Net. We obviously have the custom sized Loft Net, the stainless steel eye bolts, the rope, and some of the heaviest duty zip ties I have ever seen. Specifically, these eye bolts should be placed every 6 inches and within 2 inches on the corners. This very unique shaped corner did make things a little bit more interesting, but everything else that had to do with the eye bolt installation was self-explanatory. It just needed to be done, and it was not a quick process. Each eye bolt needed to be placed approximately 6 inches away from each other and even 2 inches on the corners. I placed marks every 6 inches and then proceeded to placing a center point on the ledger or the beam, as you can see. After that was taken care of, I then pre-drill my holes and make sure you use a proper drill bit in order to do this properly. It should be the same diameter as the bolt itself, just a little bit shorter due to the fact that you obviously want the threads of the bolt to catch the pressure treated lumber. As for the installation process, I was really hoping that this J-hook would work out perfectly and I'd be able to spin all of these eye bolts so quickly and so easily. That unfortunately was not the case. Maybe if I had a different size or different shape J-hook, it would have fit better into my drill and therefore it wouldn't start spinning out of control, but that was not the case. And as you can see there, I was hoping for that all the way down the line, but that of course did not happen, and I proceeded to hand tightening every single eye bolt with a sizable flathead screwdriver. Oh, and make sure the eye bolts are going horizontally, not vertically. Note to self. There was kind of a perfect rhythm to the madness once I did a full row, just because I did figure out that having a sizable screwdriver does give you a large amount of leverage in order to accommodate these sizable eye hooks, and therefore it made it easier to install. However, I also want to make sure and note that you probably want to go ahead and do one, skip one, and then do the other one. That way you can actually have enough room to spin this sizable screwdriver in place without having to hit the adjacent eye bolts, and then you can come back and do the ones that you skipped because you have plenty of room to do those. Basically, hit one, skip one, hit one, skip one, and then come back around and do the ones that you skipped. With a project like this, it really does take some time and energy to develop the entire thing. Specifically because this was such a unique shape, I had to actually build the structure first before I could order the net because of the fact that it was such a unique shape. And therefore it took some time to get the net due to the fact that they were waiting on me for the dimensions. So keep that in mind and food for thought.
Okay, the eye bolts are in. Yes, yes, yes. Took a little while, a couple hours, but we got them all done. Now, it's time for the net.
The net itself is super high quality and there are a plethora of options to choose from if you check out their website. And as always, I will leave a link in the description box below on where to actually find their product or any of the other tools or products found on this channel. Due to the odd shape, I use those heavy-duty zip ties to secure the net in all the corners first. Once I have them set in the corners, then I proceed to tightening a few zip ties down in the middle of the beams as well as the ledger boards. Now it's time to lace this beautiful net together. Specifically with Loft Nets, they provide great instructions to do this, and the first knot that we have to create is actually pronounced a bowline knot. And I personally have very little experience with knots because, let's just say, Brent wasn't a Boy Scout, and helpful instructions are always greatly appreciated. After I've had the first knot in place, I then proceeded to running the cord through the net, skipping one and then going to the next eye screw. Now we're doing this because we have a double lace system with this lacing method. You can actually go with a simple lacing method, or in this case a double lacing method, which basically just provides a little bit of extra support as well as more of a unique flair and style to the lacing method.
Now, as for installation, it's a pretty simplistic process, just it's going to take a while. So we have our knot right here. We go underneath and then over, underneath, over, underneath, over, and then I actually center it on the one bolt that we're centering on right here. And as we go over to this one, this is the one that we're skipping because we're going to do it with the other rope. So I center that, this side, centered here, and then I start pulling. And I keep on pulling, pulling, pulling to the point where it goes all the way through, and then I go over the top like so, and then underneath again. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, on to the rest.
This is another great example of the fact that this is a very simplistic process, but it takes a lot of time and energy because of the fact that you have to run the entire rope through every single time you either go through an eye screw or the net itself.
Okay, one down, one more to go.
The double lacing method does come with two separate ropes, and therefore you want to start the second rope on the opposite side that you started the original rope. Then proceed to going the opposite direction. Instead of going underneath the net, you're going to go over the net and then underneath the eye screw, if that makes sense. That will give you a really cool, unique style as far as the lacing pattern goes. As you proceed to the end, you then have to cut off the excess and then tie off a separate type of knot, which is called a close hitch with a double half hitch. Sounds kind of like a country song. Clove hitch with a double half hitch, right? Anyways, at this point, cut off the excess, burn the ends so they don't fray out, and guess what? We are done! I love producing videos for this channel because not only am I trying to help others learn how to build and create, but I am also personally able to create some really unique aspects, and this is something that I really probably wouldn't have taken on other than the fact that I felt like I had to do something creative with this space, and I reached out to Loft Nets. They were incredible. They wanted to be a part of this project from day one, and as you can see, super sturdy, extremely durable net system that we can use for a fun little getaway oasis where it's just a fun, huge hammock that I cannot wait to share with my baby girl one day. Now you might be asking yourself, Brent, what about safety? What about the railing you just took apart and now anyone and everyone can just fall right into it? Well, we'll be taking care of that in next week's video because we're going to be doing a custom slide gate. So please make sure you check out next week's video as well for the culmination of this project. And as always, this is one beautiful, sexy beast of a loft net. Oh yeah. Hey Brent, look up. Go ahead, look up. Look up. Oh geez. Yeah, well, at least we got it back. In one piece, actually.